Hello everyone, this is Piero San Giorgio, just out of the dentist. So if you hear my voice strange, it's because half of my face is paralyzed. I'm very happy today to greet Aki Cederberg from Finland, author, among many things, of this excellent book, which you see completely on the wrong side here, Journeys in the Kali Yuga, a pilgrimage from esoteric India to pagan Europe. Aki, thank you very much for being here with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here.
Yes, your book, I read it this summer, really is very, very good. I really love to read it. I will tell you the background why I was reading your book. First of all, because you seem to be invited in the right places in the internet, so I thought that this was interesting to read. But more importantly, I'm writing a book on fear. And fear leads us to our primordial beliefs, primordial traditions. And I thought that your book is really spot on to let us rediscover who we are and what are our traditional beliefs. So that's all I have to say, because I would like to give the rest of the hour to you. But first, maybe a question is, I was trying to find how to define you, how to present you as an author. And I was thinking that you're an explorer. Is that something that defines you well?
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, I'm a musician. I'm a writer. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a traveler. So yeah, explorer. Anything you. I mean, certainly this book is a book in exploring both the inner and outer world. So yeah,
exactly,
it would apply.
That's what I thought. It's not necessarily, well, first of all, you're an explorer geographically. You travel like me. You've traveled in many, many places. You certainly know India much better than me and really well from what I read. But indeed, more importantly, is exploring your own soul, your own self. And what led you? Was it something in your background, in your original life that led you to this path of exploring yourself and traveling across the world to find yourself?
I think it's just the eternal quest to know oneself, to find the truth within oneself and to understand who I am as a person, as a human being, and who we are as human beings. Why are we here? What are we here for? What are we doing here? And where are we going? Where are we coming from? Ever since I was very young, I had these, I've had dreams and visions and these sort of vague memories of places. And these places have been very special sort of places of power where I felt very at home. And then when I grew up more, I wanted to find those places in the actual world where I would feel the same way. So in a way, it's this hermetic axiom of as above, so below, or as within, so without. So you try to find those places in the external world which you have already glimpsed in your internal world. And also, I believe that some of our qualities we inherit from our forefathers and foremothers. And I believe that there's aspects of the soul which are, you get from your ancestors. And so my ancestors have been, on my father's side, doctors and priests. And on my mother's side, it's been a lot of seafarers. Mm-hmm. So I have these both sort of in my veins. I have the sea in my veins. I've always had a great thirst to explore the world and sort of find something of value and bring it back to myself and to my people. And also I've had this calling to find the sacred and explore the mysteries of the universe, which I think, ideally priests and doctors are not that different. They both explore and want to heal people or help people. So yeah, that's I see myself walking in the roots in the footsteps of my ancestors, if you will.
You just said something very interesting. I was thinking to ask you this question later in the conversation, but let's go. Is that you seem, I think, very wisely to show that if you're just a scientist and you do not believe in the mysticism part of man or in the irrational part of man, you are missing a lot of what being human is. And at the same time, if you're just a mystic and live in mumbo jumbo crazy stuff and don't compare it or put scientific hypotheses to it, which is something I'd really like to do. For example, when I try ayahuasca or things like that, I really try to approach it in a scientific way. Well, you're missing the complementary and convergence of these two sciences in a way, one which is very, very old and one which is relatively new. And I think this is very interesting in your book.
Yeah, thank you. And I do agree with what you say, and I'm not opposed to that at all. I think, Aleister Crowley, whatever one might think of Aleister Crowley, he had this slogan in one of his publications, which was the method of science, the aim of religion. And I've always thought that was very good. I mean, I think both science and religion should be aimed to explore the universe and find out knowledge about what all this is and what it all means. And it's a quest for truth. So I don't see those things, as opposed to one another. I just see that they should be complementary to one another and not opposed as they are in today's world. At least in the West, they are sort of very opposed.
Yes.
To each other.
Now, one thing that you discovered traveling in India is that over there, like in many other, let's say, countries which are not yet fully into modernity or partially into modernity, you still have a vast majority of people who are absolutely certain, absolutely convinced of the reality of their religious belief. And these beliefs are structuring their lives from birth to death and everything in between in such a way that they have this incredible strength. Whether the belief is correct, is incorrect, it's good, it's evil, it doesn't matter. But they have this incredible, I'm thinking of the word of determination to do in life what is structuring according to their beliefs and religion. And we see this in the Muslim world, sometimes for the worse. And you describe this in India, which is also Muslim. In half, part of India is also Muslim and was under Muslim rule. You see this in the past, and you see this as very missing in the West. I don't know if it came across right. Did you get?
Sorry, I kind of missed like the last 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. No, I meant, yeah, we have a little bit connection issues, but
yeah,
that's why I cut my video so that we have better. Your image is perfect. Okay. No, I meant that this structuring that beliefs and religion and mysticism brings is completely missing now in the West.
Yes, and it's a huge problem. Why I traveled to India is because I wanted to find the real sort of mythic world of my own people, of Finland and of Europe to a larger extent. And I realized that very young that we don't have this sort of living tradition and a living myth anymore. We just have sort of a written down mythos, but it's not alive in the same sense as it is in India, where the Indian tradition has never been broken in the same way that the Western pre-Christian traditions have. And so they have something very rare, which is an original unbroken tradition. And so I went there to see how that tradition takes form in the modern world in India, and to sort of see how a pagan, if you will, mythology would exist as a living thing in the world and not sort of a dying thing or a dead thing. So in order that when I return to my homeland, I would be able to sort of see my own world in a clearer light. And yes, I think our own mythical understanding of the world is what is very much lacking in the West, that we have sort of lost our mythopoetic understanding of the universe and of ourselves and of our part in it. In a way, we have no great story anymore. We don't have a greater narrative for who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. I mean, in many ways, we're supposed to sort of not exist anymore at all. We're just, everybody's tabula rasa, everybody's just a blank page, and our identities are really made up by our consumer choices or something like that. But I do think that there is a mythic world that's very real and a tradition, and I think that it doesn't require a lot for it to be reawakened in people, because it is really like home. People will instinctually recognize it when they encounter it and when they see it, because it's a source and a place of great power and comfort and wisdom, and it's this sense of belonging. You belong to something. So in a way, the world that I was seeking in India was really my own world, and a way to get in touch with my own world in a better way. And that's what I've been doing, and this is also what I am trying to do for other people, because I think it's very important.
Yes, very, very, very interesting. In fact, a lot of my, I have a few friends which are older than you and I, and who traveled in Pakistan, in India, in Nepal in the 70s, so way before our time. And it was very common, or it was fashionable at the time, to go there, do drugs, and kind of discovering yourself. And what you say in your book is, I think is quite wise, in the sense that we should not aim to become Hindus or Buddhists, or we can go learn there and learn and discover and bring back what we find is interesting. And there's the theory that Jesus, the real Jesus, went across to India, or at least was exposed to Hindi and Buddhism through these travels. And that's why he brought back some parts of it in the Christian, or at least what he was telling himself, at least before the church took it over. And what is interesting is that we have very old traditions in Europe which have been cut by Christianity, which is in itself an old tradition now, because it's been in Europe for 1,800 years or so. And now this one has also been cut, and indeed, to echo what you just said, Nietzsche said as a warning that man killed God. He wasn't boasting. He wasn't happy about it. In fact, he ended up really crazy. He was foreseeing the disasters of a civilization that loses its religion in the 20th century. And today, we are even worse probably than 1939 and 1914. The disaster of the 20th century and the disaster that the 21st century that will be, in my opinion, echoes this cut. And there is no other places in the world where this is happening. Everywhere else, you still have, Shinto in Japan, and you have traditional forest religions in South America. You have animist religions in Africa. I've traveled in Africa myself a lot. And you have even shamans in Altai and in Russia and in Siberia. But in Europe, we have had these cuts. And I'm going to give you a quote, and you tell me what you think. It's a quote of French writer André Malraux. He says, "The nature of a civilization is what aggregates around a religion. Our civilization is incapable to build a temple or a shrine. It will be forced to find its fundamental value, or it will decompose." What do you think of that?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, I would completely agree with that, and I think a civilization doesn't produce the things that it produces because of simply abstract ideas or values per se. It's this relationship to the mythical world or the mystical world or the numinous world, which makes us build great cathedrals and create works of art and great compositions of music. And these are the things that they spring from somewhere else. It's not just ideas and sort of rationality that is at the root of something like a civilization. It is a mythos. And even if we have an ethos, so to speak, we still need a mythos. We need a relationship to the numinous world, I think. And yes, it is a big problem that this has been cut for the Western people. I think of it in the way of, in classical shamanism, there's this idea that a person can experience soul loss, where they lose their soul or a part of their soul, and the job of the shaman is to go and retrieve that part of the soul which the person has lost. And often this loss can happen because of a tragedy or a death or something that has happened that has made them lose their soul. And I think in a collective way, Europeans have sort of lost their soul, and they're floundering in the dark, trying to grab things, trying to replace this soul loss with abstract ideologies, political ideologies or whatever those might be, or modern sort of quasi-mystical ideologies and the religions and things. But I don't think those things quite reach deep and far enough, and I think we need something deeper. And I realize that this is a huge problem, because we have Christianity and paganism are really the two strands that Western civilization is built upon, and also this tension between them. And I understand, and I don't really want to get into this like Christianity against paganism and this, because this is you can't win this battle.
Yes.
And it's also quite boring, to be honest.
Yes.
This eternal, match against Christianity against paganism and so forth. Because I'm writing my next book at the moment, and it's going to be called, or it's tentatively titled, Holy Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And in this book, I'm exploring the holy, sacred landscape and traditions of Europe. And so I'm exploring 9 different countries or regions or peoples within Europe. And I'm sort of trying to also see what is in common with these people, because I do think that there is a common European spirit and mythos that combines us. I mean, we have more in common as a people that we do, have apart or have differences. I mean,
Sure.
The differences are very surface, for me at least, than the much larger things that we have in common. And so yeah, of course, in this book, I have to write about Christianity and also Christian sites, because Christianity still, there's many sites that are Christian nowadays, which were pagan first, but are now Christian. And you can't sort of explore the spirit or the spirituality or the mythos of Europe without also exploring Christianity. Now, in its current form, I don't think that Christianity can sustain our spirit. I mean, it's had its chance. It's not really working, and it's not rooted, especially, for instance, in places like Scandinavia and Finland. I mean, these are places where Christianity arrived with the sword. It was forced into these lands, and it never really stuck, because if you look at Scandinavia now, even though it's nominally Christian, it's probably the most secular place on planet Earth.
True.
So people haven't really adopted the religion in any deeper sense, as a people, So I think we need to sort of, either Christianity needs to be completely, it needs to go through another sort of reformation, or I'm really not sure. I'm thinking about this issue at the moment, actually, quite a lot. So maybe in a year from now we can talk again, and I'm wiser about this issue.
It will
But
be
yeah,
yeah.
the original quote that you said, I do completely agree with that.
Yes, I think that first of all we'll have the chance to discuss this topic because I think it is indeed fascinating and completely in sync with what what I'm trying to do myself in my books to discover, how we can survive means. Sure, there's a lot of physical and material aspect to survival, but there is a very important one, which is first of all social, in the sense that we cannot survive alone. So we need to survive as a group, as a civilization, or at least a small civilization, perhaps a tribe, like what writes Jack Donovan and authors like that. There is also another element, which is the spiritual and inner survival, because if you survive as a beast, and let me be very clear, I think our current civilization, materialistic and consumeristic, is extremely bestial. It's really not putting us to be a very high level human. Therefore, the basic spirituality is about Black Friday and running and getting your new TV on the cheap. This is nonsense. This is death of the soul, and I'm someone who does not believe in God. So and I can say it's a death of the soul. So you can imagine someone who believes in God or gods. The problem that you describe in your book, and I agree completely, is that we cannot go back to the paganism of 2,000 years ago, and we cannot go back to Christianity of 200 years ago, or even 2,000 years, or even 1,000 years ago. It's it has failed, and so the openness is, which I think is an opportunity, is how we can build something new based on our traditions and our roots, but at the same time, and this is the challenge and question for you, is how can we make it so that it's not just a cult of five people. Although if Christians are listening to us, they will say, well, at the beginning, Christianity was also a group of 12 people, or was it 13?
Yeah, I think I wanted to touch something that you said earlier, that you don't believe in God, and I think also there's this. I'll answer your question in a second, but just to say that I don't think that the belief is at the core or century sort of mythological or mythopoetic or magical views, because it's just simply, I think it's an opening to being and the mysteries of being, and you can perceive these gods as any way you want and still be included in the so-called religion or this mythological world. For instance, in the group we don't have any dogma on how people should relate to the divine or the gods. If you want to think of the gods as archetypes or symbols or sort of figures of inspiration, that is fine. Or if you want to view them as personalities of nature or manifestations of the absolute, that is fine. But I think that the important thing is that even in like Hinduism, you can be a deist or a pantheist or a monist or even an atheist, and you are still a Hindu. You are still part of that mythic world. And that is the wonderful brilliance of the religion of our ancestors, is that it is this open sense of being a part of something, and how you relate to it is up to you. And then to ask you a question about how do we sort of bring this back. Yes, I've been very critical of these forms of paganism that tend to emphasize the past. I'm not interested in going back anywhere, and I don't think it's possible to go back anywhere or to worship the ashes. It's much more important to preserve the fire, and what this fire is the inner essence of the pagan traditions of Europe. Not the outer appearance, and people make this mistake of dressing up in silly clothing of the past, or trying to replicate a certain era of things. Those things might be interesting culturally, and they might be beautiful and valuable as cultural artifacts or pieces of history and customs, but they are not the tradition itself. The tradition is the inner essence of a people, the inner spark, the flame, and that's what's important. And I think that will, I mean, I don't know how these things come into being, but they seem to light up in times of crisis sometimes, and manifest themselves. And I can talk to the Finnish people. I mean, this is not, Christianity arrived in Finland really late.
Mm-hmm.
And it arrived, of course, it had to arrive a few times because the Finnish people converted back to paganism. So there was, for instance, a second crusade against Finland where the Swedes came over and tried to convert back all the people to Christianity, who had converted, gone back to their old ways. So we have this really old way of being that's right under the surface. It's right under the surface of our culture and our way of being, and our holidays and our way of interacting or being in nature, and just the life ways. It's right under the surface. And whenever people in Finland, I notice, writers and artists and musicians and people of the spirit, when they start looking for these things, they eventually very quickly come into the presence of their old divinities or their own magical world. So I think that's the important thing, and that's how things go. I don't know if there's anything that I can do or anybody else can do besides trying to be, a voice of the greater mouth of tradition, because that's what I see myself as trying to be or do, is to speak with this greater voice and give voice to something that is eternal, that is not time bound. Because I think we need to take the essence of the past, but the archaic, if you will, and then we have to take it into the future. We have to combine the past, the present, and the future into one axis.
Now that's very interesting, and I think this is exactly what I took as a message, fundamental message of your book. I must say to our readers that I encourage people to read your book. And what's interesting is that first of all, you also write very well. And what I found in the structure of the book was very interesting was that the book starts. I'm trying to find the right word. It starts on with the speed and interest of the narration, and then in the last two chapters, it really becomes extremely powerful. So you end up the book like you cannot stop, and you really finish it very, very strong. And this it's talent and it's perhaps technique, but it's a very good way to write books. I like that. Because when you finish it, you say, okay, now I want to do something. It's not just about, oh, interesting, he's been meeting with this funky looking and funny looking Rampuri and these Kali and Shiva and Rama worshippers across India. The guys with the hand, and you have also, I must to say to our listeners, there's also very nice pictures in the book. You have illustrated with some of the interesting interesting elements of your travels, but in a way, this is not the fundamental. And you finish the book with the fundamental, which links to what you just described.
Ultimately, this is a book about, the spiritual crisis of the Western person, and it's a story of homesickness.
Yes.
It's a story of seeking home and longing for home and not being sure what this home is. And so the whole process of the book is that it starts and it goes very far. It goes into India, which for me as a European, is a very far place and a bewildering world. And then gradually in these circles, I come back into Europe in the story, and then gradually I come back to my home here in the forests of Finland. And I end up in the end of the book sitting in the ancestral villa of my family in the forest by the sea, by a fire in November, the death month. It's literally called the death month in Finland. And as the world is burning, it seems to be burning outside. I mean, this was when I was writing the last chapter, there was the Bataclan terrorist attack in Paris. Then I really tried to be by this fire in my ancestral villa and really give voice to this flame, this fire that I'm speaking of, and what is it that I really have learned, and what is it that I really am trying to bring back to people. And I don't have any like ABC guidelines for people, like, okay, now you go out and do this. I'm offering my story as a mirror, as an analogy for people. And if people realize that they can read my story and understand that there might be parallels to their own life in many ways, then I think it becomes more clear what they could do as such. But I think a return to a deeper sense of existing, being, and belonging is crucial to both the individual and us as a people and a civilization. And this is what I'm trying to give voice to in the book. Sorry, I interrupted.
No. That's excellent. And my follow up would have been is that I write books about survival, and I mentioned briefly that survival of the soul in a way and the spirit is essential to the survival of the physical, and especially long term. You have instincts short term, but long term you need that. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about this survivalism and the spiritual and aspects of that?
Yes, I have thought. I mean, I think as far I haven't read your book, but I have read about your book, and I've understood that the conclusion that you come to in your book is that you survive also only by having a community or a tribe or a network of people and such. And this is something that we have been building here with some friends of mine over the past 4 or 5 years now, where we've been trying to sort of create a group that is a spiritual group, but also that we can do physical things and depend on each other and have some sense of accountability and building this kind of tribal grouping, which is something more than just, a hobby or a club or something that's like you can do when it's fun and easy, but also something that you could really rely on people to do something. So yeah, I've thought about it. I thought about it a lot, and also like, what is it that you want to survive for?
Yes.
I think it's important. Like we don't live off bread and water alone. Like I think human beings are, religious or spiritual creatures, and we need a sense of existence. Why? Like a reason and a deeper sense of meaning. A more spiritual or soulful sense of being. We need something to sustain our spirit also. It's not just that we survive as physical beings, because, that's only one aspect of our being. So I think it's very important that we discover this inner essence, because without it, it's like, without that inner essence, we're lost no matter what happens in the external world. Even if we had a lifetime and many lifetimes of leisure and luxury, it's so what? We will be withering away because our inner essence is missing. And you can see that happening right now, because if you look at our culture, I mean, Western culture in general, what does it produce at the moment in terms of culture? It's pretty abysmal.
Yeah, it produces LGBT.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so it's I think this is what needs to happen somehow.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how this will happen, and if it will happen, but I would sure hope so.
Now, I believe you have children, or at least one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I have four, and I'm sure you will confirm that when you have children, it changes your perspective of life immediately and completely.
Yes.
And so you have to discover meaning because you will have to teach them something. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know about, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, it's been a long time I've not been to Finland. And so I know it's not like Sweden, and nor was it 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Are you on the same path of decadence and destruction that Sweden, for example, is, or France or UK? But let's say in your region, Sweden is on the forefront of decadence and self-destruction.
Yeah, I think we are. We're always a little bit behind Sweden, but we're sort of trying our best to get there. Unfortunately, I grew up in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, and I can see how that city is really changing for the worse all the time. And so when my child was born, we moved away from Helsinki to a smaller town because there's still wonderful places in Finland and pockets of beauty and places, small towns and communities where you can live in this sort of very utopian way almost, where it's beautiful and there's not too different. But it's a shame that Helsinki and big cities are following the path of the rest of Western Europe. And yeah, I think we are. Everything is a little bit always behind in Finland, so we're not quite with Sweden yet. But in the last few years, I've seen a massive increase in this kind of stuff being promoted, and this just insanity being promoted here. So yeah, unfortunately, I think we're not as immune to these things as some other countries, and I think this is because just as Sweden has, we've been exposed to American pop culture, sort of globalist culture for the last 70 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because I'm exploring how these pagan traditions have taken form in various places and regions in Europe, and for instance in the Baltics, in Latvia and Lithuania, this folk faith or this tradition has survived much better.
Yes,
because they have been oppressed by the Soviet Union, and because they have been oppressed, they've felt that they have something that they want to protect. But we haven't had any oppressors in Finland. We've had this, time of peace and plenty, and so we've forgotten that we have anything to protect, and we've forgotten that we have anything worth fighting for. So memory has grown weak, and that's because of just the cultural exposure that we've had to things that has made us forget these things. Because for instance, the pagan traditions are much more vital, I would say, in Lithuania and Latvia, where, for instance, in Lithuania, the president gave the sort of founder of or one of the foremen and spokespersons of the traditional Lithuanian Romuva movement, which is this ancient faith movement, gave him this sort of high honor, cross that only the most esteemed civilians get from the president. And so, this is and this was given to him because of his sort of dissident work, during the Soviet Union and this time of oppression to preserve and promote the Lithuanian pagan tradition. So yeah, Finland is not giving out any awards for for people doing dissident work like this, unfortunately.
Excellent. Well, let me conclude to say to our readers that it's really a good book. And usually, even when I interview people, it's always because I like the book. But this one is on. I think it has a very important level in the books that people listen to me can read, and because it can be the start to some quest of their own to discover themselves and discover how to reinvent their own traditions and their own roots. And so I encourage people to read. I will put the links in the descriptions. Journeys in the Kali Yuga by Aki Cederberg. I remind people, if you're in Scandinavia, I remind you, I will put we are on the 4th of December. I will put the video online probably tonight. I remind you that I'm giving a speech in Oslo Saturday, December 8th. So if you're still around Oslo, or I can be there. And Ari will do this again, and perhaps when I'm next in Finland, we can meet or do a conference together or something like that. It will be
yeah, absolutely.
It will be really nice.
Be nice to meet you.
And likewise, if you come to Switzerland, or if you go to participate in the French Civil War that is starting now, let me know. Excellent. It was great talking to you. And
great talking to you as well. And I definitely want to visit Switzerland. It's on my sort of list of things to do. Europe is such a beautiful continent and beautiful world, and there's just endless, things to explore in this wonderful culture of ours.
It does. We're quite unique, as everyone is, as every region is, but ours is ours. So we have to cherish it and reinvent it and make it strong and peaceful again. Because today it's tough. Thanks again.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot. Huh?
Yeah,
Take care.